A conservation easement is something that is on private land, and it is one of the most powerful tools that we have in the toolbox for conservation and land protection, not just because of the spatial element, the landscape scale conservation that comes from them, but also how powerful they are in time. They are in perpetuity, they are forever, they are permanent. So they are very strong tools that we have at our disposal.
There's a small piece of heaven in southwest Wyoming where my heart and soul feel a higher calling to conserve the beauty of all God's creations for muley fanatics and our future generations.
The Muley Fanatic Foundation fights for the future of mule deer, also wildlife, habitat, and hunting heritage. Learn more at muleyfanatic.org and tune in to the Wild Things and Wild Places podcast with Joey, Chris, and Janet.
Yeah, Muley Fanatic Foundation, Wild Things, Wild Places podcast. I'm Joy Faigl. Of course, I'm here with Janet Crofts, Chris Steffen, here from the office and headquarters. And our guest today is Kerry Schultz. She is with the Green River Valley Jackson Hole Land Trust, and she is the program director, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. You reached out to me on doing a podcast and that with some easements, having explained what easements are and all that stuff. And I thought it was a great idea because a lot of people really don't know what a lot of that is. But I think first, I guess, introduce yourself and just kind of give a little bit of a background if that works for you.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Nice to be in Green River. My name's Kerry Schultz, formerly Kerry Gold. It's a recent change like we just talked about. And I am the Green River Valley Program Director. The Green River Valley Program is a regional program of the Jackson Hole Land Trust. And we are based in Pinedale, and we do permanent conservation and protection on private lands, mostly focused in the Green River Basin in Sublette County for our regional program. But the Jackson Hole Land Trust itself operates throughout the Wyoming portion of the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So we are operating, I think, in about 7 counties in Wyoming altogether. And I have the privilege of leading the Pinedale-based Green River Valley program.
Awesome. I guess we could just go right into it. So what exactly is like a conservation easement? What's the best way of describing that?
Good question. So a conservation easement is something that is on private land, and it is one of the most powerful tools that we have in the toolbox for conservation and land protection, not just because of the spatial element, the landscape scale conservation that comes from them, but also how powerful they are in time. They are in perpetuity, they are forever, they are permanent. So they are very strong tools that we have at our disposal. And what an easement is, technically, is it's a legal agreement between a private landowner and a qualified entity like a land trust, or it could be a government entity. There's a bunch of different kinds of organizations that can hold conservation easements and be parts of those agreements. But a land trust is a common one that you'll find in our area of the world. And when a landowner has a vision for protecting their property, when they are concerned about subdivision or development or alterations of the land from how it is ecologically functional today, they can exercise private property rights in a way that puts their land under protection and removes those threats and those risks of ecological loss or agricultural loss. So a good way that we like to describe it is when you own private property, your private property rights are like a bundle of sticks. You have all these different rights that make up your private property rights. You have hunting rights, you have access rights, subdivision rights, water rights, development rights, mineral rights, all these different rights that make up your property ownership. Any one of those rights can be partially or wholly transferred to someone else or another entity. Landowners that participate in the Access Yes program, they are sharing their hunting rights with others so others can hunt on their property. Landowners that have utility easements on their property, maybe Rocky Mountain Power has a utility easement, they can come onto your property and maintain their power lines. There's a lot of situations in our part of Wyoming where there's third-party mineral ownership, where mineral rights are owned by someone else. So your property rights can be transferred to others in part or in whole. So when a landowner is doing a conservation easement agreement or a voluntary conservation agreement, you can call them either, they are describing in that agreement how they want, most of the time, their subdivision and development rights to be restricted going forward in the future so that development and subdivision cannot occur on the property in a way that's going to negatively impact what we call conservation values. And the land trust or whatever entity is in that agreement with them is responsible for upholding the terms of that agreement forever. So conservation values are agriculture, wildlife habitat, water resources, archaeological sites, cultural sites, open spaces, scenic views. The list goes on and on. But it's an exercising of private property rights to put protections on your property and realize the value of subdividing and developing without actually subdividing and developing in the way that easements are incentivized. That was a bit of a long explanation, but that's essentially what they are.
No, it's great.
Yeah.
I knew all that already, but
Good.
thanks for
Then you can check me. Let me know if I'm like,
yeah, I'm fact
That's
checking
true.
it right now.
Please do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Off like Google or what?
Yeah.
There's a live feed coming into the room of fact checking right now.
No, great. Yeah, that really, a lot of folks really do not realize what all an easement means. And yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, so is there a specific easement that you've been involved with or even know of, especially in Wyoming? Because I can think of one right now that we are involved with, but that was like extremely critical. And thankfully it came forth and did a lot of maybe wildlife protection or preventing some development or something like that. Is there one specific easement that you think was perfect?
There's so many, especially if you're looking in the context of all of Wyoming. Obviously, the ones that I'm most familiar with are in my own program. The one that we are working on together is really awesome. And our rule of thumb is we don't announce easements until the deal is sealed and they are recorded and official, just because so many things can go awry. So when that one comes together, I'm very excited to announce it from the rooftops. But there's so many in the Green River Valley program that are meaningful, and in Sublette County itself that are really important. There's some substantial protections in the Upper Green along the path of the pronghorn and what we call the Kearney Conservation Easement and the Obar Y Conservation Easement that were established in like the early mid-2000s. Many thousands of acres of the path of the pronghorn conserved specifically to keep that migration path intact and protected and facilitate that movement of pronghorn from their winter range to the south around here near Rock Springs, all the way up through the Upper Green to the Gros Ventre River out to Grand Teton National Park. So that was a very early, powerful move and protection for migrating ungulates that was put on the ground in the early 2000s by what was the Green River Valley Land Trust. We are now the modern day form of the Green River Valley Land Trust as a regional program of Jackson Hole Land Trust. But that one's very near and dear to my heart, not just because I live up there right next to it, but because that was a group of people coming together saying, this migration path is important, protecting it is critical. This is the most powerful tool we have on these private lands to keep that corridor open and functional for these animals. And it also supports the ranch that's there and the family that's held that land for a long time and stewarded it very well.
I know that's not the one
Yeah,
you're
I was going
thinking
to say,
No.
Joey, what was
But-
the one you were thinking of? Or
Chris,
we're talking about?
Were you going to ask him?
of. No, I wasn't. I am. I'm going to ask something here in a second, but
Oh,
I didn't know if you wanted to continue.
yeah, it was just the Fremont bottleneck one.
Oh, sure. The Luke
Luke
Lynch
Lynch.
Wildlife Habitat
Yes.
Management Area. Yeah, and incredibly important right there. There's a couple of bottlenecks along the Wind River front that have some pretty substantial protection that's gone on the ground, and it's wonderful. There's still more to do. Absolutely.
Yeah, that one held together a mule deer migration. Like, any development through there could have been catastrophic to that migration, detouring them around what they're used to for the last so many 100 years. And people don't realize that if anybody's familiar with migrations, of how important those are and how well these critters know where to go each and every year and stay on that same path, taking that away from it, from what they know every year, and the detour through either a town or who knows where else, what other direction they would have had to gone, lay across more highways and byways that could have caused them to be hit by vehicles, and who knows. But yeah, that was the first one that we were involved with, and that was a very important easement.
It's an incredibly important conserved piece of land that is managed to be for wildlife, which is wonderful. And I'm very proud of how our land trust has built up conservation easements very close to it and helped build and buffer that network of protection. Like I said, there's still so much more to do, and the bottlenecks are such a delicate, sensitive part of the migration corridor. There's constantly threats going on, but it's great to know that WHMA is there and not going anywhere, and it's always going to be there for the deer.
Yeah, so I have a question, Kerry. So I guess, would you say that most of the easements, as they're identified, do you guys as an entity, and I know there's others, like Game and Fish, I know probably is constantly identifying areas of concern in private property holdings, but do you guys go out and seek out the private property owners for these areas that you guys feel would be important to have a conservation easement, or does it mostly happen from the private property side that they contact you or another entity and the ball starts rolling?
Yeah, great question. We don't solicit anyone. We don't cold call anybody and say, hey, would you want to do an easement? We find that to be inappropriate and not super ethical. What we try to do is we try to build our network of relationships. The best way to spread the word about how great conservation easements can be is to give someone a good experience doing one, and they're going to tell their neighbors about it. We have a local advisory council of 6 Sublette County residents that have diverse backgrounds and what they represent on the advisory council. They are excellent for spreading the word and connecting us with the community and helping us connect with landowners that might be a good fit for an easement, or an easement might be a good fit for them. But we really just try to give landowners good experiences, have them connected with the right resources after the easement's established to help them be the best stewards that they can be. And that's been so effective for helping spread the word of this tool that we can help connect landowners with. We do a ton of outreach up in Sublette County and in the Green River Basin about what we do. You had us down at Mule Deer Days this past March, which was awesome. We got to spend some time down here in Rock Springs where we haven't spent as much time in the past, and we connected with all kinds of people that had all different levels of familiarity with conservation easements. And a landowner that's interested in doing one can really come from anywhere. So it's really putting ourselves out there and making sure people understand this tool is available while giving good experiences to the landowners that we work with. So they can come to us from all kinds of ways, but we really try to put ourselves out there to be available if landowners have questions.
Nice. Yeah, I can definitely see where if you guys were making cold calls to landowners, that probably doesn't go over real well.
Yeah, it's not our style.
Right.
But we're in good shape right now. We have 6 active conservation easement projects that are in varying states of completion. Some are just started, some are very close to the end, and everything in between. About 3,200 acres of conservation easements in the works in the Green River Valley program. So we've got a decent amount to work on right now, and the interest is very strong right now, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and when we've been involved, and I can think of another one, we were involved with the Red Creek conservation easement south of Rock Springs. The landowner down there, I don't know how that started. I know we got involved with it from the Game and Fish side of things, from a funding proposal. But these things it's not just like Muley Fanatic Foundation funding. We're just a piece of the pie, because oftentimes they're pretty expensive.
Oh, yeah.
You're talking, I'm assuming most cases, millions?
It really depends on so many things. Depends on the market, the value of a conservation easement. In its simplest explanation is the value of the land today as it is, with all of those property rights as they are today. And then you take the value of the land once the easement is on, and it has those restrictions that prevent building and subdivision throughout the easement, or it does allow building and subdivision in some places, which is what's nice about them. They're very customizable if you do want to retain places to build and you do want to be able to divide the land a couple of times for kids and future generations and things like that. But the difference between those two numbers, the land today and the land after the easement, that's the value of your conservation easement. So when the market is right, you can have easements be very expensive. You can have a piece of land be worth many millions with all of its ability and potential to develop it and subdivide it and all that potential that could be realized by exercising those rights. And then once the easement is on and those rights are restricted, you can restrict them very heavily, very strictly, or you can have a more flexible, able to build in places kind of conservation easement, which are things we negotiate with landowners. If that is, the stricter that is, the stricter the easement is, the bigger that difference is going to be. So if a landowner wants a conservation easement, if their vision for the land is to have it be very strict, that difference is going to be bigger, and it can be pretty substantial. It can be in the millions. We are at a point right now where if you are a landowner considering doing one of these, you are really at a great time to do it, because we had this weird COVID boom up in Sublette County and in the Green River Basin and the Green River Valley. Market values have gone up a lot for properties. That is just starting to turn down. So now's a great time to capitalize on the value of land. If anyone's interested in doing a conservation easement and wants to realize some of those financial incentives for doing one. And it really varies. We have easements that end up costing in the hundreds of thousands. We have easements that end up costing in the millions, and it's certainly a longer process and a little bit more strategizing to find the funding when they are more expensive. But not all landowners want to do a sold conservation easement. We have landowners that want to fully donate them. There are some substantial tax benefits that you can take advantage of when you donate a conservation easement, either partially or wholly. So yes, it can really vary. Every case is different in the cost, but it can be pretty substantial.
So I'm curious, if a landowner was to come to you guys, what is the acreage? Like, is there a minimum, maximum?
Good question. We get that question a lot. For a purchased conservation easement, there really is no set number for anything. A parcel of land that's relatively small in acreage might have some pretty significant conservation value. It could be in the Fremont bottleneck and be 20 acres big or in size. And that is going to be really critical for conservation. That has a excellent conservation value as far as wildlife habitat and migration habitat goes. And then you can have a many 100-acre parcel of land that doesn't have as much conservation value. So it really varies. I would say 80 acres or more is ideally what we'd like to see for a purchased conservation easement. Anything smaller than that is probably going to need to be a fully donated situation, or a situation where the landowner's donating more of the value of the easement than they typically do. So the model in the Western United States, with pretty much any land trust that you come across, is going to be that conservation easement value that we talked about before. We want to see the landowner donate at minimum 25% of that value. We want to see them committed. We want to see that they are really in this for the conservation and not just the finances. That is something our board of directors has maintained, our land trust does. And most of the time, landowners really don't have an issue with that, because the outcome financially is so substantial and there are tax benefits to that donation as well. When the parcels are getting smaller, that's when we might say we need to shift the ratio and see it more donated than purchased, because we need to compete for these funds. We have to apply to Muley Fanatics, apply to federal funding sources and state funding sources, and be able to compete for those funds and make the property or the project a priority for these funders. When the parcel's on the smaller side, if a landowner really wants to have it funded, they will probably need to be pretty flexible on how much is being purchased and how much is being donated. The smallest conservation easements that we administer are about 40 acres. I don't think we have anything much smaller than that. It's not that we wouldn't take something. It just would need to have some pretty significant conservation value to not just make it worth our time to develop the easement agreement and steward it in perpetuity, which is a tremendous task that we take on as a land trust. It needs to be worth it if it's going to be small, if that makes sense.
You mentioned a few of your like funding sources, for example, us or federal, state. Can you hit on a few of those things that you guys utilize for funding these conservation easements?
Absolutely. Like I said, when we are doing a purchase conservation easement, most of the time we are paying the landowner 75% of that conservation easement's value. The first place we go to is the Natural Resource Conservation Service, the NRCS. They have what's called ASEP-ALE through the Farm Bill, the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, agricultural land easements. They love their acronyms in the federal government, don't they?
No, God, yes. In the government as a whole,
Yes.
everything's got an acronym.
Yes, but that's Farm Bill money that is specifically dedicated to conservation easements to secure and safeguard agricultural lands and maintain our agricultural land base in the kind of communities that we're in, where ag is such a way of life around here, and it's such an important staple to where we live. A lot of the time we are working with ranches when we are doing conservation easements, not exclusively, but most of the time. So the first place we'll go is the NRCS and that Farm Bill funding, because they will pay up to 50% of the value of the conservation easement. So if you can get the NRCS funding and you have the landowner's 25% donation of the easement value, there's 75% of the easement value right there. Then we typically will go visit state funding, the Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resource Trust. They will contribute up to 25% of the easement's value. So if the price is right, you can go to NRCS, WWNRT, you have the landowner's donation, you have your easement funded. That is the ideal scenario. But sometimes easements are very expensive and the NRCS and the WWNRT funds are not enough. So you need to go to more sources like your Muley Fanatics Foundation and apply for funding and make your case for why this land is important to permanently protect. And if everything works out, then you can get that funding. And we visit a variety of other state and private sources to close those funding gaps. But you guys are an excellent source that we know cares about the resource and will recognize a really important big game property when one comes up.
The NRCS funding federally, is that threatened or under threat right now? Has it been reduced significantly? How? I just have to imagine it's federal. It probably moves at a snail's pace, or no? Is it fairly robust and quick? Because maybe I'm off. Maybe with conservation easements, when a private property owner has decided that they're going to do this, maybe they're not in a hurry. And maybe they understand the process, but it just seems to me like so many of these things are just oftentimes critical, and time is of the essence to get it nailed down, so to speak. And maybe I'm off. I don't know.
No, you're not off at all. That's a great question. There's so many different things I could dive into in my response.
Go for it. Dive away.
I would say easements are permanent. They are a huge decision. Easements stay with the land. Every future landowner of the property is beholden to the terms of that conservation easement. So it not being a super fast process is probably a good thing, because we want it to be done right, and we will take our time to make sure that it is done right. When a landowner approaches us, they're interested in doing a purchased conservation easement. We give them very fair warning that it can take essentially 3 to 5 years to do one. And a lot of that holdup is the fundraising and the grant writing and the waiting to hear back. Yes, I would describe the federal sources as the slowest to respond to whether or not you got funding. In the NRCS's case, in the Farm Bill, every state is allocated a certain amount of money every Farm Bill for doing conservation easements through that ASEP-ALE program. And it changes every year. We keep very close tabs on what the number is. And with the administration change this year, things were a little bit chaotic. We heard pretty quickly, relatively quickly, that Farm Bill funding was pretty safe. So we weren't super stressed out by that. We did apply for and receive, or were awarded, an RCPP award last year, Regional Conservation Partnership Program. We were awarded $21.5 million just to do conservation easements in Wyoming. That's going to be a huge impact. When the administration change happened, that funding was frozen. We did not hear until, I think, last month that it was unfrozen and that we were re-awarded the funds, or the funds were released and we now have them again. So we did have a little bit of a shakeup there, a little bit in having to rethink our long-term funding strategy for some of our conservation easements. But it's all worked out and everything's okay. And we've been awarded that RCPP again, and we are working through the contract for that and dotting the I's and crossing the T's there currently. And yeah, so we have that federal funding secured again, which is going to be just so huge for getting projects completed and getting easements done for the benefit of the public. And I'll note, if someone was interested in doing a donated conservation easement, when you take out that grant writing and fundraising element, we can close those in a year to 18 months. The fundraising is what extends that timeline.
Sure. I got more questions, but I don't want to just hog the mic. I always do.
Oh,
Well,
fine.
I'll ask another one. So you had mentioned that a lot of the people you work with are ranchers. What are some of the other people, or is it organizations? Is it just somebody that just owns some lands? They're not really ranchers. They just own lands.
Yeah, good question. I would say the vast majority are people who have land that are zoned agricultural. So they usually have some form of ag use going on their land because that is the least expensive tax class to essentially have your land in where we live. So it's a very common thing, even if a landowner isn't personally a rancher or someone with an ag background, they're often leasing their ground for grazing or leasing their ground for haying. There's usually an ag element in there. There is a subdivision on the Hoback Rim called Hoback Ranches, which I'm sure you guys are aware of. We hold about a dozen conservation easements in there that were all fully donated. So that's instances of landowners that aren't in agriculture, because there is no cattle grazing in Hoback Ranches. People can have horses, but there's no livestock grazing in there or any kind of cattle operation in that subdivision. However, we all know the significance of the sublet mule deer migration corridor going through Hoback Ranches and over the rim and up into Bondurant. That is, those are examples of us working with landowners that are not using land for agricultural purposes, but want to see that conservation value of mule deer migration protected going through their properties.
Isn't there another subdivision proposed or some, and I'm just thinking this was a little while ago, in that country up there, that they were wanting to have it rezoned, I'm assuming from agricultural to residential, and they wanted to subdivide it. And I just remember something in the article that I read that someone made the comment of, when the question was posed about migration, somebody in that realm of things that was obviously in favor of changing the zoning said, oh, they'll find a way around the animals, the deer, the pronghorn, whatever. Oh, they'll find another route, which, like Joey said, when you're talking about something as critical as the Fremont bottleneck, going around isn't maybe an option.
We've all seen the science that deer walk essentially the same path
Exactly.
every year, and it is something inherited from generation to generation. So it's incredibly disruptive to have some kind of fragmentation happening within those migration corridors. There was a subdivision approved by the county commissioners last December in the area around 40 Rod Road.
Okay, that's the one I'm...
Daniel, Wyoming, essentially, between Daniel, Wyoming and the Hoback Rim. And as of right now, not much has happened on the ground, but that was approved, and there were a tremendous amount of discussions and meetings about the impacts to wildlife, and Game and Fish was weighing in and speaking to the impacts it would have. Ultimately, that subdivision was approved. I don't know what the status of it is. In the meantime, the deer and the pronghorn can still move through there, which is a good thing.
Do you guys ever weigh in on all those things, or do you just stay in the background unless it directly involves a conservation easement?
The latter, essentially. We, at the direction of our board, don't weigh in on decisions like that, but what we do is we are there to be a resource. So we made sure that that landowner and the county commissioners as well knew that there was a conservation easement option through us if the landowner was interested in doing that. All we can do is make ourselves available and let landowners know what the tool is that we can connect them with, and hopefully they want to take that path if it makes sense for them.
That was great information, and I really don't have any questions on it because you pretty much have already answered two of my questions. I don't know. It's good to have a lot of organizations such as ourselves being able to fill in those holes when it comes to the funding. And I don't think you can really find any group or organizations that would probably go against funding any of those. But I'm so happy that, yeah, probably.
I don't,
Yeah.
I try to wrap my head around what's the negative. If you're talking about, and we talk about private property rights are important. So you have that private property owner that's decided that's what they want to do. And then you've got funding sources that still allows that private property owner, let's say they run cattle. They can still do those things that they've always done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe touch on, without throwing anybody under the bus, but what are some of the pushbacks on these?
A lot of it, I would say the vast majority of pushback comes from a misunderstanding of how easements and some malignment that has occurred that is pretty unfortunate. But I think the more people can understand about easements, the more they'll understand the benefit and respect the fact that it is a private property right that someone is exercising, and they have every right to do it. Someone has the right to do a conservation easement to prevent subdivision and development as much as they have the right to sell their land for subdivision and development. The landowners that have done easements really should be applauded because they walked away from way more money selling it for subdivision and development to instead conserve it and keep it part of our ecosystem and ecologically functional. So they should be really applauded for their contributions and their commitments to conservation. I think some of the misconceptions are, and this came up a lot at Mule Deer Days, actually, we had a big map up of where our conservation easements are, along with like the Sublette Mule Deer Migration Corridor and some other wildlife values that we wanted people attending Mule Deer Days to see. So many people came up to us and said, "Oh, are these all public access? Can we hunt in here?" And that is a common misconception. Conservation easements do not necessarily allow public access. If a landowner wants to allow public access, they certainly can. And we think that's wonderful. If they don't want to, they do not have to, and we would never pressure them to do so. Public access is not something a landowner has to allow when they do a conservation easement. And just in general, I think when people hear private property rights, it raises hackles a little bit, right? They think that there is a property right loss going on or a taking of private property rights. And that couldn't be further from the truth. We are working with willing landowners who want to do this, and it benefits them and their family to do this in so many different ways. It brings families together in agreement on the future of the land in a way that maybe there wouldn't have been something that would facilitate that for the future of their land. In Sublette County specifically, I think it's 69% of producers are at or past the age of 55, so retirement age. And there was a study done in, I want to say 2023, that found that 40% of farms in the United States don't have succession plans in place. So no plan for the land or who's going to take it over or who's going to inherit it. And that puts the land so at risk for being sold off into pieces and turned into subdivisions and development and taken out of the ecosystem and no longer being wildlife habitat or being ranch lands. This can be something that can bring families together, help them achieve their common goal for what they want to have happen to the land. The proceeds from selling an easement can be someone's retirement. It can help the next generation afford taking over the land. It can reduce property taxes. It can reduce or eliminate estate taxes. There's substantial income tax benefits. The list goes on and on of how this can help support families and help secure the agricultural land base where we live. But it also bolsters land uses that rely on open space. So they're a powerful, wonderful tool in the right place. There's misconceptions out there about how they work because they are complicated. Every legal agreement that's a conservation easement is different and unique because every property is unique and every landowner is unique in their vision. So that is something we navigate, and we just try to maintain our message and our course and be consistent in what we're saying. And in time, we'll reach who we need to reach that might have misconceptions. certainly through this podcast.
Yeah.
I'll just throw out there, if there's any large ranchers listening or will be listening and they don't have any succession planning in place, I'm available for adoption. And I promise I'll take good care of that land, and I'll probably do a conservation easement, and I'll keep it going. I won't subdivide it. I promise.
You'll be their son.
Yeah, I'll be their son,
Yeah.
whatever. So
Awesome.
just throwing that out there.
And something we are working on currently is working on building the network of succession resources for landowners. It's not just easement. You certainly do not have to do a conservation easement to get a succession plan in place, but it's a complicated and daunting process, and it's also dealing with mortality in a way that is hard for all of us. It takes attorneys, it takes tax advisors, it takes business planners. The list goes on and of the kind of professionals you need to engage with to have a good succession plan in place. And where we are trying to build that ecosystem of professionals for landowners and landowning families to tap into to get a succession plan in place that works for them. For some of them, an easement is a helpful tool with that because it's going to take off market pressure to sell and can alleviate that pressure and also give them some income to help them pay off debts or invest in buying more land and expanding their operation. There's just all kinds of things you can do with the proceeds that can help you plan for the future and keep ag lands and ag hands, is what we like to say.
Makes me think of a question. So,
No way.
yeah. So, do you guys find that like post conservation easement for that value of that land? And this is the reason I'm asking the question is that, and I know it comes up frequently, but like lately there's been some very large ranches in the state that have just gone up for sale. The Pathfinder Ranch between Casper and Rollins.
Yeah.
And I know from reading those articles and knowing about that property that there's a lot of conservation easements on that, which is great. But I think somewhere in that article, one article I read said it was like a negative. But do you guys see that as like post the landowner that's got a conservation easement decides, okay, I've got to get out. I'm 90 years old and I don't have any family to take this over. I'm going to sell it. Is that now decreasing the property value or increasing it, or does it matter in your guys' estimation?
We keep a close tab on what easement properties are selling for. We're not seeing a terrible diminution from them that should be discouraging to anyone, but it's very case by case, and it's very poignant of you to bring this up right now because we just last month held an information session in Pinedale specifically for realty companies and realtors to talk about what do you do when you're trying to sell land that has a conservation easement on it and there's this perception that it is a burden rather than a benefit. What we're finding is there are a lot of conservation-minded buyers out there that do want these properties and do see the appeal of knowing we're never going to have neighbors. This is never going to get turned into a subdivision. That's a real attractant for the right kind of buyer, the conservation-minded buyer that is very into recreation, is interested in getting into ranching, especially new ranchers and farmers. Again, that easement might bring down the value of the land a bit, but that can make it more affordable for the right people to take over ownership. So I don't think easements should be considered a negative or unattractive. And it's all about mindset, and you got to have the right conversation and the right things need to be said. But I think the protection element of a property should really be attractive for people, knowing that it is so special that it has this permanent protection on it. I have talked to ranchers that have sold their land that have easements, and I've asked the people you've talked to and had it under contract with, do they have concerns about the easement? Do they not like it? And they shrug and say, no, they don't mind. They think it's great. So it's a really case-by-case basis. Pathfinder is massive.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we have anything in Sublette County anywhere near the size of Pathfinder. But I would say the markets don't really show that easement properties aren't selling at a major decrease in price for the landowner that's considering selling. And then for the conservation buyer or the conservation-minded buyer, we've found that easements actually make them more interested in properties.
Interesting. I was going to call them and see if they'd take a check.
Just don't deposit.
Just don't deposit it for a little while.
25,
Maybe never.
30 years.
Yeah.
So, do you think Wyoming's ahead of other states in easements and stuff, or do you think that there's another state that is doing better than us and maybe we need to look at?
There is over 240 land trusts across the United States. And, I do have it written down here. Let me just peek at my note. Oh my gosh, I am so wrong. There are over 460 land trusts across the United States, and over 33.5 million acres of conservation easements in our country. Land trusts are everywhere and conservation easements are everywhere. I don't know if one state has done more than the other. What I can say is the land trusts in Wyoming, there's a handful of them that are land trusts, and then other entities like RMEF or the Nature Conservancy or the Conservation Fund that are not technically land trusts but can hold conservation easements and do hold conservation easements. We have a great reputation in Wyoming. Our land trusts are very respected and well regarded across the country. The Land Trust Alliance, which is the national organization that sets the standards and practices for land trusts and accredits them. We're an accredited land trust through the Land Trust Alliance at the Jackson Hole Land Trust. They have an annual event called a rally where all the land trusts in the country come together and spend a week learning and meeting and collaborating and sharing ideas and sharing stories. And so it's a wonderful event. We are so often, we've heard of you. The Jackson Hole Land Trust. You guys, we have a great reputation. I'm so proud of it. The Jackson Hole Land Trust has been around since 1980. And we have worked very hard to build our expertise in conservation easements and build a good reputation, not just for the sake of our reputation amongst other land trusts, but also, again, for landowners to be able to recognize that we can be a trusted partner for them to entrust one of their most precious things, which is their land and their livelihood, with us and be able to help them realize their vision of protection on their land. So all of which is to say, I don't know. I don't know if Wyoming has more under conservation easement than another particular state. And they look a lot different on the East Coast than they do out here. East Coast conservation easements tend to incorporate public access, which we don't do as much out here. We can and we do sometimes, but they look a little bit different in different parts of the country. And in Wyoming, the land trusts here, including our own, are very well regarded and have good reputations.
So if you guys have conservation easement on, say, a large property that's got hunting value, there's nothing in that conservation easement that would prohibit the landowner to then go to the Game and Fish and say, I would be willing to open up an HMA, a hunter management area, walk-in area, whatever the case is.
No, not at all. They're absolutely within their right to do that. The hunting rights are outside the purview of the conservation easement because we are talking about, again, subdivision and development rights, sometimes mineral rights. I will say we do have some landowners that their vision for their property is it is a preserve and they don't allow hunting. And that is their choice, and we respect that choice if they want to have that. It's really not common. Most of our easements don't have any restrictions on legal hunting or hunting access or being in the Access Yes program. I can think of 3 or 4 off the top of my head that have been in the Access Yes program or been a walk-in hunting area. And it's up to the landowner what they want to do.
Nice.
It's all carried in. I can't even ask a question now because it's all been answered by one question from Chris.
I'm sliding my mic away from my mouth. Right?
No, because I've had many folks that say, can we have public access? Can we hunt that? Because if not, then I'm not going to contribute my funds for that easement.
Sure.
And it's always, let's really look at the importance of this. And then we hear someone complain because a resident in California decides to move and buys a big acreage of land and develops on it. And that same person may be the one that asked me the question about hunting access to that. It's so that was going to be one of my things is, how do I explain that more, make it more clear to the person why it's important for us to raise a bunch of money to support this easement. And then I guess my other question, and maybe you've answered it a little bit somewhere before, earlier, but so how long does, I think you said like sometimes it might take a year and a half before you are able to actually take everything and settle with that easement, or what's an average time frame of when this easement's finally taken care of, all the paperwork's taken care of, finalized, and within that process, so say this easement's going to be $1 million, but someone comes in that wants to purchase that land and offers $2 million. Is during the process of that easement, can that be taken away because someone offers that landowner double of what the easement's going to be? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I won't get too heavy into detail, but when we are in seriousness pursuing funding for a conservation easement, we're going to dedicate staff time and energy and resources to pursuing a conservation easement. We go into a purchase and sale agreement with that landowner. And that purchase and sale agreement states what the purchase price is going to be, and it states a timeline for the project. And part of that purchase and sale agreement says that you can't sell the property while we're working on this easement. Once that timeline has expired, if we haven't completed the easement, the landowner does not have to re-sign a PSA if they don't want to. If the time went by and it didn't work out, they can move on and do what they want. But we do set that up to safeguard ourselves at the organization and our resources, and to make sure that there is a clear understanding of what the next steps are and what the goals are for completing the project. On average, I would say a purchase conservation easement takes 3 years. A donated easement, again, could be a year and a half. It just kind of depends on what our workload is.
Yeah. I asked that just because a lot of times, especially like when it came to that Fremont bottleneck area, like we have to hurry. We just felt like pressure. We really need to hurry and get these funds so we get this taken care of. I was just curious so we would know that, hey, this is very critical if we don't get this now. But if that's kind of low protected, to give some time to raise those funds in that situation, then it's a little bit easier and eases it off of our mind to where, hey, it's okay. We'll get the funds there. We could commit to it as long as we're okay with protecting that easement still coming forth. So that's why I asked it. Just
no,
sometimes it's
question.
like you just feel pressured. Oh man, this is so critical. We got to get this taken care of like today. But if it's protected, and say no, we have a couple of years. We only need another $50,000 to fit the bill, so we have some time. Okay, we'll commit to that remaining amount of funds because we can raise that within this next year, and it'll be taken care of. And now we have that land protected. The
process to establish an easement, I think, is pretty proportional to the temporal impact of an easement. They're forever. In the grand scheme of the existence of that conservation easements, a few years is nothing. It's proportional. We certainly wish we could go faster, and we've certainly taken steps like that RCPP award I mentioned before, that $21.5 million. That is meant to help speed up that process because those funds are allocated for easements. We've pre-selected projects for that money to go to as part of applying for those funds. So that should help a lot with smoothing the timeline for getting easements done faster. And then we can do more if we're doing them faster.
I have no more questions. This has been great.
You only asked one, so
that's all I needed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I appreciate you guys having me on. One thing I would really want to emphasize, since this is the Muley Fanatic Foundation, is just the role of private lands in providing big game habitat and ultimately giving us the amazing hunting experiences that we have around here. I know that in Sublette County, which is the main place we work, we do have easements in Sweetwater County as well. We have a pretty substantial easement out in the Great Divide Basin that has some really tremendous winter range for pronghorn and deer and has some great sage-grouse habitat as well. And there's actually elk out there as well. I saw 6 bulls when I went out and monitored it last. But anyway, Sublette County is where we're doing the majority of our work, the Green River Basin. We'd love to extend more into Sweetwater County when there's opportunities. But 80% of the land is public and 20% is private. And I think there's this misconception that because the private land is in that minority percentage, it's not as important. But if you look at where private land is, it's incredibly important. Those private lands were established in some of the most hospitable and productive parts of the landscape. People picked the best places. And it was also the best places for wildlife to be able to access the best habitat. So I don't think private lands, because there's 20% of them in the county, should be disregarded or dismissed as not important. They provide this incredible connective tissue between these large swaths of public land that are critical for migration corridors to function. And if migration corridors can function on the true scale that they're supposed to, we're all ultimately going to have better populations and better hunting experiences. So I hope hunters can realize the benefits of this private land protection. And access is a touchy subject, and I understand that if you can't touch it, you might not feel like you have a connection to it. But there are inherent public benefits to doing conservation easements and keeping landscapes open and ecologically functional and connected. And that's what we do at the Jackson Hole Land Trust. We are working on an ecosystem scale to protect things like the Red Desert to Hoback migration corridor. That's your greater Yellowstone ecosystem right there, all the way down to Rock Springs, all the way up to the national parks. That's what helps define the extent of the GYE. So that's the scale that we're working on that ultimately is going to benefit all of us as hunters. So I hope people can understand the importance of protecting private lands and really look at where they are and what's in them. And you'll realize that it's some of the best habitat, not just for big game, but for so many different wildlife species that we're fortunate to have here. And at the same time, you're supporting the ranching and agricultural heritage that is so important to the character of the area that we all love here. So the benefits are extensive. And for hunters, I hope they can look more into easements and see what a powerful tool they are for protecting big game habitat and supporting those populations.
Yeah, sad. And Sublette County holds so much for mule deer, winter range, and the migrations that if that large buck that you've seen year after year happens to winter in such area, for that connectivity that it needs because of that easement, you'll continue to see that buck until he's harvested or dies of a hard winter or something. But that's the thing, is like that bottleneck at Fremont Lake, like we mentioned already, if those deer had to take another route, there's a higher percentage chance of them dying on a byway, highway, whichever route that they had to redirect themselves causes them to die earlier than really they would have had if that easement is there to protect it. And you say Sweetwater County, but Sublette County is extremely important, especially for mule deer, because where I have land in that county, the migration runs just to the east of it. And there's multiple number of properties through there that if those folks would do an easement on that, man, there is a huge stretch of migration that it could protect. Mm-hmm. And the importance of that is just crazy, because I know some of these lands that are around ours has been purchased and have been developed with some housing and whatever else it may be. And as a kid, those were never there, so it was easy to see a lot of that movement from those deer. But now some of that housing's developed there. You can actually see them going a little bit different route because of that. And that's just this is one home in a 40-acre lot. So I can't even imagine thousands of acres being developed, a subdivision being put on there, what those deer would do. So.
It's true. And it's not just the loss directly from that subdivision, but we've all seen the research that the disturbance also makes them avoid habitat that is suitable for them because it's in proximity to that disturbance. So there's more loss than I think people really realize. And that prompts me to say a few things. The first would be, it's virtually impossible for a migrating ungulate to not cross private property at some point. Keep that in mind when you think about these migration routes. And the migration routes are not strictly where they are. It's just where most of them are migrating. So even if something isn't in a migration corridor, it can still be incredibly important to protect in the grand scheme of things. And I think there was some research that found that elk in the Pacific Northwest and the Rocky Mountain region, during the winter, their use of private land goes way, way up. And we all know how important winter habitat and access to winter habitat is for maintaining these species and their populations. The other thing that comes to mind is I would never want us to come off as like anti-subdivision or anti-development. We're
Right.
certainly not. I live on a 10-acre parcel that used to be bigger and was subdivided. People need places to live, and growth, especially here in the Mountain West, is inevitable. So what easements are meant to be is a tool for balance. They are meant to help us preserve the most ecologically and agriculturally important lands that we have here to maintain the character of the area while allowing for natural growth. The human population's only going up. And 25% of the land in Sublette County, Wyoming, is protected with conservation easements. And that is a number to be so proud of. That is reflective of a major commitment in the community and amongst landowners to have their land stay open and protected and connected. But we can't stop there, because in time, everything that can be developed is going to be developed at some point in the future. So everything that can be protected needs to be protected. So we won't stop at 25%, but I will say we're certainly not in the business of trying to put every acre of private land in a conservation easement. That's not realistic.
Right.
We're here to be a tool for landowners and a tool for balance, and it's a powerful tool, a conservation easement. So if people are interested in learning more, our land trust is always available to help answer questions and be a resource.
You guys do great work.
Thank you.
It's definitely something needed.
And the
Sure.
protection side of things is just one side of things. Once an easement's established, that's when the real work begins. We're in stewardship mode, and we visit every property annually to monitor and make sure that the terms of the easement are being followed and that everyone's in compliance. Our organization would be at risk if we did not uphold the terms of a conservation easement. So we take it pretty seriously, but we're not playing police, so to say. We are there to be a resource for landowners. We have immense connections in the community with professional resources and free resources and cost share to help landowners be the best stewards of their conservation easement property that they can be. And like you said earlier, a while ago, you mentioned that landowners can keep using the land as they've always used it. And that's a beautiful thing. The stewardship side of things is also something that we're very proud of, is being a resource for these landowners and connecting them with whatever they need to have best management practices going on the ground on their land.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming here, Kerry. We were just thinking, how long could we talk about easements? But really, there's a lot behind the scenes. And
I could talk all day.
Yeah,
We
see,
could
yeah.
probably go.
yeah.
I thought of 5 more questions I could have asked, but I won't.
Oh, we got all day.
No, I think Kerry's done a good job of answering a lot of them. So.
Oh, thank you. Any questions at all? Yeah, we're happy to answer them.
If somebody's listens to this and is a landowner and wants to reach out with questions, how do they get in touch with you?
We, like I mentioned, have a few regional programs and then our main Jackson program. The Green River Valley program is in Pinedale. You can go to jhlandtrust.org. That's the Jackson Hole Land Trust's website, and you can get to all those different regional programs through there and get our contact information, whether you're in Park County or Fremont County or Teton or Lincoln County or Sublette or Sweetwater. Look us up on that website and get in touch with us if you have questions, whether you're a landowner or not. Again, we're here to be a resource.
So, any fall plans?
September is right around the corner. I love upland bird hunting. I love hunting forest grouse. I have 2 pointers. I have a German wire hair and a German short hair. I'm so excited to go hunting with them next week. Oh, I'm so excited.
If the bird population is anything like it was last year,
Ooh,
it's going to be a banner year.
we had so
Yeah.
much stock
Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
end of the year last year, so much bird stock. And then once December passed, we got into our chucker hunting phase down here in Rock Springs, and we went over to Thermop and got huns and chuckers, and oh, it's so much fun. Right now, you guys might be aware there's a pretty big fire in the Upper Green. The Dollar Lake fire is going
Yeah.
on. I have a 293 elk tags that have nervously been on my mind since that fire's been going on, along with the fact that my house is there. I live up there. So it's been a stressful week. But the fire looks like it's under control. But I'm excited to go bird hunting. We've got some family coming out for elk hunts in the 93 unit, a couple friends with 93 tags. So I'm super excited. And yeah, it'll be a fun fall. Excited to bird hunt, though. Man, so excited to bird hunt.
It's easier to pack a bird.
So much.
We have 2 German short hair pointers.
Oh, wonderful.
And we have property up on the commissary out of Kimmer.
Okay.
And we've seen quite a few grouse.
Great.
And the dogs they're just pointing them.
Oh, they've lost
ready.
control.
Yeah. They're getting ready for bird season.
It is so much fun to hunt with dogs.
Yeah.
It's just so fun that they're like your babies, but also they are these machines that are bred to make hunting awesome.
Yeah. They're fun.
Yes, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on.
No,
Yeah,
thanks
for
for
being-
traveling down here,
My
participating
pleasure.
in this. And
I hope when the easement that we are working on together
Mhm.
close, maybe we should come on and make a big announcement
Yes.
because it is a doozy of it's such a good conservation easement. It's got some wonderful mule deer values.
yes, absolutely. I was glad that we were able to meet that final bit of funding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're
that-
thrilled.
Yeah. So
I think spring of next year, we're optimistic.
awesome. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you have to remind us so we could schedule that. And make
Oh, I will.
that all-
I'll
I'm
find
sure-
you at
I'm
Mule
sure
Deer
you
Days,
will.
and I'm going
I
to
know.
corner you while you're so busy, and I'm going to be like, hey, remember that thing we talked about in September?
I won't be there.
You're not going to be a Mule
Whatever.
No, I'm going to be gone.
He's so full of it.
Oh, is he kidding? Oh, I can't tell. No, Mule Deer Days was super cool.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
excited
excited
to do it
about next
again.
year. Yeah, we're
You guys
excited.
are getting better every year.
Yeah, thanks.
No?
We can.
We change every year. We try to get better every year.
We're all
growing.
Change for the better.
Growing.
Yeah, you got to figure it's a big thing, and of course it takes figuring out, and you guys are going to figure out what the right recipe is, and it's going to be forever.
It's our 4th year. I
Mule
think
Deer
we
Days.
might get it this year or next year. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Yeah, the most important is trying to raise those funds, and that's what we
Oh,
need.
yeah.
So that's the direction we always hit with these changes. So I think it's going to be a great one next year, and we'll just see what happens.
We're excited, and it's nice to connect with this area. And so many people came up and looked at the map, and it's mostly Sublette County, and we're down here in Sweetwater. But almost everybody I talked to, I was like, "You ever go up here?" And almost every single person was like, "Yeah, I hunted there for 20 years." And
Because we're County 4. See? And
Yeah,
that's why
that's
County
what we do.
23 despises to see a County 4 plate in town. Yeah,
They
it's
call it
been
that.
for years.
It's called the
Yeah.
Springers. Oh, the Springers.
Yeah, the Springers.
That's
Yeah.
a polite way to put that.
Yeah.
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 but
That's why you have conservation plates with no county
Yeah,
designation
exactly.
on it.
Yep.
I
Hint, hint, folks.
support those crossings.
Yeah.
But hey, at Mule Deer Days, it was a benefit to have so many County 4 people spending time up there because it helped us make the point of these easements are serving your hunting experience. So it was wonderful.
Yeah, that's why it's important for us to have conservation type organizations or whatever groups to be part of that because
it's
it's also a way of educating folks. And that's why we welcome a lot of other NGOs to participate in that and whatever else our partners to be there. It's not just about the vendors that are selling product. It's also an educational piece. So
I got a sweet deal on a cooler too. I was next to those guys selling coolers last year. And
nice.
at last day, I got one and it's awesome. We use it all the time. And I was next to the bar.
Now the chief
Even
goes
better.
there.
Even better.
No wonder I
was in
didn't
a
see you at
great
the booth
mood
a lot
all
of times.
weekend.
That's all going to be there again, and we've already have a good chunk of folks already committed to it. So, and this year, and Chris has even got some new ones. So, yeah, it's going to be
Let's
good.
Yeah, thanks for putting that on because we're excited too.
Awesome.
It's a good time.
Again, Kerry, thank you again for
You guys,
being here, and we look forward to some more.
absolutely.
Okay, Wild Things, Wild Places, the Muley Fanatic Foundation podcast. Thank you for all listening, and until next time, happy hunting since fall's right around the corner.